Massive stones stand silent across every continent, holding secrets that could rewrite our past. These ancient megaliths form a global network far older than the pyramids of Egypt or the ziggurats of Mesopotamia. By the end of this journey, you will see human history in a completely new light. We will uncover how structures separated by vast oceans share identical astronomical alignments and construction techniques. What forgotten knowledge allowed our ancestors to coordinate such a vast, interconnected project? What does this say about the true origins of civilization itself? How does the story of humanity change when we listen to what these stones have been trying to tell us for millennia? These structures are more than just random piles of rock. To understand their global mystery, we must first define the megalith itself. A megalith is a large stone, often left in its natural state, used to construct a prehistoric structure or monument. These are the building blocks of a forgotten world. They were shaped and raised by ancient peoples, typically without the use of mortar, relying on sheer ingenuity and brute force to lock them into place. The forms they take are as varied as the landscapes they inhabit. You have the lonely standing stones, solitary sentinels marking forgotten pathways. You have the majestic stone circles like open-air cathedrals aligned with the heavens. Then there are the chamber tombs, subterranean rooms built for the dead, and the dolmens, which look like massive stone tables. Each type represents a profound undertaking. The sheer effort required to quarry, transport, and erect these multi-ton stones speaks of a society with advanced engineering knowledge and a powerful, unified purpose. How did scattered cultures, supposedly isolated by vast oceans and impassable mountains, all arrive at such similar architectural solutions? Why does a dolmen in Korea share a basic blueprint with one in France or North Africa? This fundamental similarity is the first thread we must pull. By grasping what a megalith truly is, we can begin to see the pattern, a ghostly blueprint etched into the very skin of the earth. Western Europe serves as the heartland of this ancient stone network. Here, the scale and sophistication of megalithic construction reaches its peak. In England, the Great Circle of Stonehenge rises from the Salisbury Plain, its massive sarsen stones arranged with a precision that has captivated humanity for millennia. But this was more than a monument. Its carefully placed heel stone captures the first light of the summer solstice, while other alignments mark significant lunar cycles. This was a functioning astronomical observatory, a stone calendar built by people with a deep and enduring knowledge of the cosmos. Far across the English Channel, in the French region of Brittany, lies another marvel. The Karnak stones number in the thousands, standing in long, parallel rows that stretch for over a mile. Walking among them is like navigating a vast, petrified forest. The sheer order of these lines suggests they, too, could have tracked celestial movements, serving as a complex calendar or a sacred pathway for rituals. What is truly compelling, however, is the shared language of construction. The techniques used to shape and erect these European giants, from the mortise and tenon joints at Stonehenge to the strategic placement of menhirs, echo methods found at sites ringing the Mediterranean Sea. This points to something profound, a shared pool of knowledge or perhaps a common origin that spread across the ancient world. How did prehistoric communities, without written language or modern tools, organize the labor to move stones weighing tens of tons? The coordination required speaks of a highly structured society with a unified vision, a vision that somehow connected them to cultures thousands of miles away. This shared architectural language did not stop at the European coastline. It spilled into the Mediterranean Sea, transforming its islands and shores into a vibrant crossroads for megalithic culture. Here on the sun-drenched island of Malta, we find some of the most astonishing and ancient structures on Earth. The megalithic temples of Malta, like Haga Kim and Mnajdra, are colossal complexes of stone erected over 5,000 years ago. That makes them older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids of Egypt. These are among the very first free-standing stone buildings in human history. Their curved facades and intricate chambers built with a skill that seems to appear out of nowhere. Even more haunting is the Hypogeum, an enormous, multi-level subterranean sanctuary carved entirely from solid rock. This was not built upward, but excavated downward, a labyrinth of halls and burial chambers that echoes the sacred spaces above ground. How did a small island community achieve such a feat of engineering and artistry so early in human history? The answer may lie in the sea itself. To the north, on the island of Sardinia, stand the enigmatic Nuraghe. These are not temples, but massive, beehive-shaped stone towers that dot the entire landscape. Thousands of them were built, each a formidable fortress or community center, constructed entirely of dry stone masonry without any binding mortar. Their corbelled domes, where each stone layer slightly overlaps the one below, show a sophisticated understanding of weight and pressure. Farther east on Menorca, we find the Taulas. These are towering T-shaped monuments, a massive central stone capped by a great horizontal slab, often enclosed within a horseshoe-shaped sanctuary. A Taula looks like nothing else in the megalithic world, and yet its purpose feels familiar, its alignment with the stars suggesting another deep connection to the cosmos. What does this incredible variety tell us? It points to a network. The Mediterranean was not a barrier but a highway. The builders of Malta, the architects of the Nuraghe, and the engineers of the Taulas likely possessed seafaring skills that connected their islands. They shared not a single blueprint but a core set of principles, a common understanding of how to work with massive stones and align them with celestial and terrestrial forces. This was not a single culture but a web of communicating cultures, a conversation in stone that was already ancient when the first pharaoh came to power in Egypt. The Mediterranean stone network was just one part of a much wider, older world. Our journey now takes us to the vast continent of Africa, where megalithic sites hold secrets that profoundly challenge our understanding of ancient history. In the heart of the Egyptian Sahara lies Nabta Playa, a stone circle resting on a dried-up lakebed. This unassuming arrangement of stones is not merely old, it is staggeringly ancient, predating even the great Stonehenge by thousands of years. Its builders were not pharaohs, but nomadic cattle herders who carefully positioned these stones to track the summer solstice and the movements of distant stars. This was a complex astronomical calendar created in one of the most arid places on Earth, a testament to a sophisticated knowledge that flourished long before the rise of any known empire. Far to the west, along the Gambia River, another mystery unfolds. The Senegambian stone circles consist of thousands of laterite pillars arranged into precise circles and rows. Each stone was meticulously shaped, and the geometrical perfection of these circles rivals that of their European counterparts. They served as sacred burial grounds for centuries, their silent presence speaking of a highly organized society with a deep reverence for the dead and a masterful understanding of stone. Further east, the highlands of Ethiopia are dotted with mysterious, towering stelae. These massive, carved standing stones, some over 30 feet tall, were erected by a forgotten kingdom. Their intricate symbols and faces peer out from the rock, their meaning lost to time. Meanwhile, across North Africa, from Tunisia to Libya, countless dolmens stand as silent sentinels. These stone table structures, identical in form to those found in Korea and France, mark ancient burial sites spanning the entire coastline. What does this African constellation of stone tell us? It shatters the old idea that megalithic culture was a purely European phenomenon. The evidence is written across the entire continent, from the Sahara to the Senegambia to the Ethiopian highlands. This was not a series of isolated experiments. The advanced stone-working techniques and shared architectural forms suggest something far more significant, a web of shared knowledge or a series of parallel awakenings that span the globe. The story of our ancient past is not a single thread originating in one place, but a brilliant tapestry woven from countless cultures, each adding their own piece to a puzzle we are only beginning to understand. This global tapestry of stone extends deep into the heart of Asia, where the sheer scale of construction defies belief. The Korean peninsula is home to a staggering sight, vast fields dotted with more than 30,000 dolmens. These stone table structures, some using capstones weighing over 100 tons, form one of the largest and most dense megalithic landscapes anywhere on the planet. They were primarily burial monuments, built with an incredible communal effort that speaks of a highly organized agricultural society, yet their form is hauntingly familiar. If you were to stand before a Korean dolmen and then one from the coast of France, you would recognize the same fundamental design, the same solution to the problem of building for eternity. How could such a specific idea appear simultaneously in societies separated by an entire continent? Further south, across the Indian subcontinent, the story continues. From the Deccan Plateau to the southern states, you find intricate megalithic burial sites, stone circles, and towering standing stones known as menhirs. Many of these were erected during the Iron Age, yet their techniques feel timeless. The builders employed a sophisticated understanding of geometry and stone dressing, creating monuments that have withstood millennia of monsoons. Some sites feature alignments with solar and lunar events, while others mark ancient trade routes, suggesting they were more than just tombs. They were part of a living, functioning landscape. This architectural tradition reaches even farther into Southeast Asia. In the remote highlands of Laos, the Plain of Jars presents one of the world's great enigmas. Scattered across hundreds of square miles are thousands of massive stone jars, some standing over 9 feet tall and weighing several tons. Their purpose remains a profound mystery. Were they used for burial, for storing food, or for some ritual we can no longer comprehend? Their creators left no written record, only these silent, colossal vessels. Similarly, in Indonesia, sites like Gunung Padang challenge our timelines with claims of ancient, layered structures buried deep within a hillside. From the Korean dolmens to the Indian menhirs and the Laotian jars, we see a pattern. These cultures were not simply copying one another. They were each expressing a shared, fundamental human impulse, a drive to reshape the world with massive stones according to principles that seem to have been universally understood. This raises a question that is becoming impossible to ignore. Did these ideas spread from a single, forgotten source, carried along ancient trade routes by intrepid seafarers? Or did humanity, in its infancy, somehow tap into the same well of inspiration, independently arriving at a common stone-built language across the globe? Yet even these Asian wonders are not the final frontier of this ancient stone network. Across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, a new dimension of the mystery unfolds on remote islands, where structures rise that defy every assumption about isolated cultures. On the tiny island of Pohnpei in Micronesia, the ruins of Nan Madol await. This is not a simple collection of stones, it is a lost city built atop a coral reef. Imagine nearly 100 artificial islands, all interconnected by a network of canals, creating a ghostly Venice in the middle of the Pacific. The true marvel, however, lies in its construction. The city's walls and platforms are built from colossal basalt logs, each one a naturally formed, prism-shaped column weighing many tons. These stones were quarried on the other side of the island, transported across the water, and then stacked like lumber to form towering walls that soar 40 feet high. How did a culture with no metal tools achieve such a feat of engineering and logistics? The scale and precision of Madol speak of a sophisticated society with a deep understanding of hydraulics, architecture, and communal organization. Far to the southeast, on the lonely shores of Easter Island, another stone mystery stands in silent rows. The Moai, those iconic, brooding statues, are a testament to a different kind of megalithic ambition. Carved from compressed volcanic ash, these figures average 13 feet in height and weigh an astonishing 14 tons each. But the largest Moai ever attempted, named El Gigant, lies unfinished in its quarry, a colossal giant that would have stood 70 feet tall and weighed nearly 300 tons. The transportation of these statues across miles of rugged terrain remains one of archaeology's greatest puzzles. How did a population numbering only in the thousands move such massive monuments? The answer points to a complex society, one capable of unifying its people for a grand spiritual project. This tradition of sacred stonework echoes throughout Polynesia. From the Maori of the Society Islands to the great Heiau platforms of Hawaii, we find a consistent architectural language. These were open-air temples, precise courtyards defined by upright stones and raised platforms, serving as the spiritual and social centers of their communities. They were built without mortar, their stones perfectly fitted, and many were aligned with celestial bodies. The presence of these sophisticated structures on islands separated by thousands of miles of open ocean is the ultimate challenge to old historical narratives. It suggests that these cultures were not isolated castaways. They were master navigators, part of broader oceanic networks that may have shared ideas, traditions, and perhaps even the core principles of megalithic construction. The stones of the Pacific whisper a profound truth that the ancient human drive to build on a grand scale and to connect that building to the cosmos was a truly global phenomenon. This pattern of ancient stonework extends across the oceans, finding a powerful echo in the Americas. High in the Peruvian Andes, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman stands as a breathtaking example of megalithic genius. Its walls are composed of enormous, irregularly shaped limestone blocks, some weighing over 100 tons. Yet these stones are fitted together so perfectly that you cannot slide a piece of paper between them. This polygonal masonry, where each unique stone locks seamlessly with its neighbors, creates a structure so resilient it has withstood centuries of earthquakes. The technique is strikingly similar to that found in ancient sites across the Mediterranean and Asia, raising the same fundamental question: how did cultures on opposite sides of the globe arrive at such an identical and sophisticated solution for building with colossal stones? The mystery only deepens when we travel north to the jungles of Costa Rica. Here, scattered across the Diquis Delta, lie hundreds of nearly perfect stone spheres. Ranging from a few inches to over 6 feet in diameter, these granite orbs were crafted with such geometric precision that their shape is virtually flawless. Their makers, a people who flourished over 1,000 years ago, somehow achieved this spherical perfection without the use of metal tools or advanced measuring devices. The purpose of these spheres remains unknown. Were they astronomical markers, symbols of power, or part of a vast, unknown cosmological map? Their existence speaks of an advanced understanding of stone working and geometry that rivals any found in the Old World. Meanwhile, across North America, a different but related tradition flourished. While not always using cut stone, the great mound structures and earthworks follow the same core principles seen in megalithic cultures elsewhere. The massive earthworks at Poverty Point in Louisiana, built over 3,000 years ago, form a series of concentric, octagonal ridges aligned with solar positions. The Great Serpent Mound in Ohio is a staggering earthen effigy that aligns with the solstice sun. These sites demonstrate a profound knowledge of astronomy and landscape engineering, a drive to imprint cosmic order onto the Earth itself. The timelines of these American sites vary widely, from the ancient mounds to the more recent Inca walls. This fact presents us with two equally revolutionary possibilities. Did these traditions arise entirely independently, showing a universal human impulse to build and align with the heavens? Or does the evidence point to sporadic, forgotten contacts across the oceans, with ideas and techniques crossing seas we once thought were impassable barriers? The uncanny similarities in method and purpose are simply too compelling to be mere coincidence. Across the globe, these silent stones speak a common language written in the movements of the sun, moon, and stars. This celestial connection is perhaps the single most compelling thread that binds the entire megalithic network together. From the massive sarsen stones of Stonehenge capturing the solstice sunrise to the lonely circle at Nabta Playa tracking the brightest stars, the pattern is undeniable. High in the Andes, the sacred city of Machu Picchu is strategically positioned, and its structures oriented to frame the June solstice sun with breathtaking precision. These were not random placements. Each alignment required a deep, sophisticated understanding of mathematics and geometry, the ability to plot angles and sightlines across a landscape, and the patient observation of celestial cycles that unfold over generations, even centuries. How could a culture without written records as we know them calculate the 18.6-year lunar cycle or predict an eclipse? The consistency of this astronomical knowledge, appearing from the deserts of Africa to the mountains of Peru, presents us with a profound puzzle. Did this understanding emerge independently in isolated pockets of the world, a parallel awakening to the rhythms of the cosmos? Or does it point to a shared ancestral knowledge, a foundational science carried and adapted by cultures across the globe? The sheer sophistication on display challenges our most basic assumptions about the timeline of human intellectual development. It suggests that the builders of these sites were not primitive Stone Age people, but were in fact proto-scientists and master astronomers, their achievements carved in stone for us to rediscover. This celestial code, embedded in monuments worldwide, is a crucial piece of evidence pointing toward a much more advanced and interconnected ancient world than we have ever acknowledged. The stones do more than just watch the stars, they speak the silent language of mathematics. This geometric precision is etched into every perfectly circular stone ring and every precisely angled dolmen capstone. It reveals a level of sophistication that fundamentally challenges our image of ancient builders. Consider the perfect circles found across Britain and France. Creating a true circle from individual, irregular stones is no simple task. It requires a practical understanding of pi, the constant ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. We see this principle embodied in the very layout of these monuments, a mathematical truth made physical. This knowledge was not confined to one continent. The Great Pyramids of Giza are famously built with proportions reflecting the golden ratio, a divine proportion found throughout nature. Yet this same principle appears in the mathematical layout of temples in Malta and the precise dimensions of chambered tombs in India. How could such an advanced and abstract concept be shared by cultures separated by oceans and millennia? The answer seems to lie in a shared, foundational knowledge of sacred geometry, a system where mathematical ratios were believed to hold spiritual power and reflect the underlying order of the universe. But this intellectual achievement is matched by a staggering physical one: the engineering required to move these stones. The transportation of a 100-ton megalith is a logistical nightmare even with modern machinery. It required an intimate knowledge of physics, leverage, and weight distribution. Builders used rollers, sledges, and counterweight systems, orchestrating the movement of colossal stones across miles of rugged terrain. The placement of these stones shows an even deeper understanding. The massive lintels at Stonehenge are secured with complex joints, a technique known as mortise and tenon, which is more commonly associated with fine woodworking, not multi-ton stone blocks. In Peru, the polygonal walls of Sacsayhuaman use stones of every shape and size, yet each one is carved to lock perfectly with its neighbors, creating a structure flexible enough to survive powerful earthquakes. This is not primitive construction, it is advanced engineering. The geometric consistency and engineering prowess found from Korea to Costa Rica presents us with two equally profound possibilities. Either a core body of mathematical and technical knowledge was carried across the world by forgotten explorers, or disparate cultures independently arrived at the same complex solutions, tapping into a universal human genius for shaping the world with numbers and stone. Either way, the narrative of a slow, linear progression from simple hunter-gatherers to complex civilizations begins to crumble, replaced by the awe-inspiring evidence of a precocious and interconnected ancient world. The evidence carved into these stones points toward a startling conclusion. The sheer physical act of building these monuments required a technological prowess that rewrites our understanding of ancient capability. Quarrying a single 100-ton block of stone was just the first step in an almost unimaginable process. Without modern tools, how did they do it? The answer lies in a profound understanding of the material world. At sites from the Egyptian quarries to the volcanic slopes of Easter Island, we see the same ingenious method. Workers would carve a series of deep grooves into the bedrock, then drive dry wooden wedges into them. When these wedges were soaked with water, they would expand with immense force, cleanly splitting the stone along a predetermined line. This simple yet brilliant technique demonstrates a deep knowledge of physics and material properties. But then came the true challenge: moving these colossal stones across miles of difficult terrain. Here again, we find a global language of engineering. From the rolling logs used to transport the stones for Karnak to the massive sledges and earthen ramps theorized for the pyramids, the principles of leverage and friction reduction were universally understood. The builders knew how to manipulate weight and force on a scale that still inspires awe. The final act of raising these stones into their vertical positions likely involved a combination of ramps, levers, and counterweights, a carefully orchestrated ballet of manpower and intelligence. This was not brute force, it was applied science. The global consistency of these methods is breathtaking. Look at the interlocking stonework, a signature technique found in the most advanced megalithic sites. In Peru, the walls of Sacsayhuaman are a jigsaw puzzle of massive, irregular blocks, each one uniquely shaped to fit perfectly with its neighbors, creating a structure that dances during an earthquake instead of crumbling. Thousands of miles away, at the base of the Great Pyramid in Egypt, you can find the very same polygonal masonry, stones cut with such precision that the seams are virtually invisible. This same principle appears in the Cyclopean walls of ancient Greece and the foundational stones of forgotten temples in Japan. How can we explain such a specific and complex solution appearing independently across the world? Did a common teacher, a forgotten school of engineering, influence builders from separate continents? Or does this point to something even more profound about human ingenuity, that when faced with the same fundamental challenge of building for eternity, disparate minds arrived at identical, brilliant solutions? The organizational skill required for these projects is another piece of the puzzle. To move a single 100-ton block would have required the coordinated labor of hundreds of people for months. This speaks of societies with powerful leadership, advanced social structures, and a shared, unwavering purpose that could mobilize entire communities for generations. These were not simple, scattered tribes. They were civilizations in their own right, possessing a technical and social sophistication that conventional history has been slow to acknowledge. The stones themselves are the final testament, a silent argument for a much more advanced and interconnected ancient world than our textbooks have ever described. This ever-evolving timeline of our past is perhaps the most contentious battlefield in modern archaeology. Establishing firm dates for these stone structures has proven incredibly difficult, and the results are constantly forcing us to rewrite history. For generations, the conventional wisdom placed the great European megaliths like Stonehenge and the Karnak stones within a comfortable window of 3,000 to 2,000 years before the Common Era. This timeline fit neatly into the established story of humanity's gradual ascent from nomadic hunter-gatherers to settled farming communities, but new scientific techniques are shattering that comfortable narrative. The development of more precise radiocarbon dating and other advanced methods has begun to push the origins of these sites further and further back in time, revealing a past far more ancient and complex than we ever imagined. Nothing illustrates this seismic shift more dramatically than the discovery of Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey. This sprawling complex of massive, T-shaped pillars arranged in great stone circles was not built by farmers but by hunter-gatherers. The truly staggering fact is its age. The main structures at Göbekli Tepe have been firmly dated to around 9,600 years before the Common Era. That is a full 6,000 years older than Stonehenge and 7,000 years before the Great Pyramid of Giza. This single site single-handedly demolishes the long-held belief that complex society, monumental architecture, and organized religion could only emerge after the invention of agriculture. Here, on a Turkish hilltop, we find evidence of a sophisticated culture capable of marshalling a large labor force to erect a sacred center, all while living a foraging lifestyle. What does this say about the drivers of civilization itself? The shockwaves from Göbekli Tepe have prompted a radical re-examination of other sites around the world. In Indonesia, the megalithic site of Gunung Padang has become a focal point of intense debate. For decades, it was considered a structure from the first millennium before the Common Era. However, some preliminary geological surveys and core samples suggest that the deepest layers of the site could be vastly older, potentially dating back more than 10,000 years. While these findings are still hotly contested within the academic community, they exemplify the new spirit of inquiry. Researchers are now willing to ask questions that would have been unthinkable a generation ago. They are probing deeper, literally and figuratively, into these ancient structures, and the answers they are finding are profoundly unsettling. These dating controversies are far more than academic squabbles. They strike at the very heart of our story about ourselves. The traditional, linear model of human progress, which moves in a straight line from simple tribes to complex empires, is crumbling under the weight of this new evidence. How could hunter-gatherers, whom we have long pictured as living a hand-to-mouth existence, possess the architectural vision, the engineering skill, and the social organization to build a Göbekli Tepe? The stones themselves are testifying to a different kind of history, one not of a slow and steady climb, but of dramatic peaks of achievement occurring in the most unexpected times and places. This forces us to consider a humbling possibility. What if the story of civilization is not one of a single dawn in Mesopotamia, but of many dawns, flickering to life across the globe in a forgotten age, only to be extinguished and lost for millennia? The stones share more than just architectural blueprints. They echo a common spiritual language. This global network of megaliths is woven together by threads of shared symbolism and belief that defy the vast distances between them. Consider the spiral, one of the most persistent and mysterious symbols. It appears carved into the great entrance stone at Nuraghe in Ireland, a labyrinthine pattern that may chart the soul's journey into the afterlife. Then, thousands of miles away, the same intricate spiral appears in the ancient rock art of the Moai in New Zealand. How can the same symbolic fingerprint be left by cultures with no conceivable contact? This is not an isolated case. Look at the practices surrounding death and the ancestors. From the chambered tombs of the Orkney Islands to the massive dolmens of the Caucasus Mountains, we find the same reverence. The dead were carefully placed in subterranean rooms built of colossal stone, and these chambers were almost invariably aligned with a celestial event, like the rising sun on the winter solstice. This was a universal belief that the passage of the soul was guided by the stars, and the tomb was a doorway between worlds. The ceremonial functions of these sites show an even deeper consistency. Whether it was the great stone circles of Britain marking the summer solstice or the massive platforms on Tonga used for seasonal gatherings, the purpose was the same. These were places where the community came together to reaffirm its connection to the cycles of nature, to honor its ancestors, and to seek alignment with the cosmic order. This was a universal human response to the mysteries of life, death, and the changing seasons. The sheer consistency of these cultural elements presents a monumental puzzle. Is it possible that every single culture, in complete isolation, independently developed not only the same complex engineering, but also the same intricate spiritual symbols and funeral rites? The odds seem astronomically low. These shared traditions feel less like coincidence and more like a cultural inheritance, a set of core ideas that was carried and adapted across the globe by ancient seafarers or overland migrations. Or perhaps they point to something innate within us, a fundamental human psychology that, when faced with the wonder of the cosmos and the mystery of death, produces similar art, similar rituals, and similar stone-built sanctuaries. Either possibility is revolutionary, suggesting that our ancient ancestors were bound by a common understanding of the universe that we are only now beginning to decipher. These shared symbols and spiritual beliefs could not have crossed oceans by land alone. The global distribution of these sites forces us to confront a radical idea. Our ancestors may have been master mariners, navigating the world's oceans with a skill we are only beginning to appreciate. How else can we explain the nearly identical stone-table dolmens found on the coast of Korea and the shores of Portugal? These are not just similar ideas, they are the same architectural solution appearing on opposite sides of the planet. This suggests the existence of ancient sea routes, forgotten highways of trade and communication that connected continents long before the age of Columbus or the Vikings. The very presence of megalithic complexes on remote islands is the ultimate proof of this capability. Think of Madol, a city built on a reef in the open Pacific, or the temples of Malta, which required journeys across the Mediterranean. These were not built by people who clung to the coastline in fear. They were constructed by confident seafarers who possessed sophisticated boat-building technology. These were likely large, stable vessels, perhaps outfitted with sails made of woven fibers. capable of carrying not only people but also the knowledge of stone working and celestial navigation across immense stretches of water. Recent discoveries are steadily eroding the old dogma of isolated civilizations. Genetic studies now reveal traces of prehistoric contact, like the sweet potato, a plant native to the Americas, which was present in Polynesia centuries before European contact. Similarly, ancient chicken bones found in Chile appear to have origins in Polynesia. These are not just curious facts, they are biological evidence of voyages across the world's greatest ocean. Underwater archaeology is also adding to the picture, with potential sites of ancient harbors and submerged settlements being investigated off the coasts of India and Japan, hinting at a lost maritime world. These emerging lines of evidence paint a portrait of a dynamic prehistoric period, an age of exploration where ideas, people, and technologies moved across the water with a freedom we never imagined. If these maritime connections were real, then the spread of megalithic knowledge becomes clear. It was not a miracle of parallel invention occurring dozens of times. It was a conversation, a slow and deliberate sharing of a revolutionary technology that allowed humanity to imprint its presence on the world in stone. This was a network, and the ocean was its conduit. This shared language of stone extends beyond symbols and into the very numbers used to build them. A common measuring stick appears to have been used across the ancient world, a standard unit of length now known as the megalithic yard. It measures approximately 2.72 feet, and its presence is detected in the geometric layout of stone circles from the British Isles to the shores of the Mediterranean. The consistent spacing between stones, the diameters of the circles themselves, all seem to be multiples of this single, fundamental unit, but the discovery does not stop in Europe. Remarkably, similar standardized units have been identified at ancient sites in the Americas and across Asia. It is as if the same ruler was used to plan monuments on opposite sides of the globe. This is not a vague similarity in style, it is a precise mathematical correlation. What does this mean? The use of a standardized unit implies a level of sophistication far beyond simple monument building. It speaks of a shared system of mathematics, a common language of measurement that would have been essential for planning and constructing these geometrically perfect forms. Imagine trying to build a perfect circle with a team of workers without agreeing on the length of a single step. It would be nearly impossible. The megalithic yard provided that universal step. It was the key that allowed master architects to translate their complex designs into reality, ensuring that a circle in Scotland and a complex in Malta could be built to the same exacting standards. This shared measurement system would have been absolutely vital for the transmission of architectural knowledge. How could you teach someone to build a perfect stone circle across a vast distance without a shared unit of length? You could not simply send a blueprint, but you could send a person, a master builder carrying a knotted cord or a carved rod that defined the megalithic yard. This individual could then instruct local workers, using this universal standard to replicate the precise dimensions and sacred geometry of the original design. This evidence of a global measurement convention is perhaps one of the strongest threads tying these distant sites together. It moves the conversation from mere coincidence to potential coordination. The stones themselves are telling us that the builders were not just working from the same spiritual playbook, they were working from the same technical manual. But these stones were not always silent. Recent discoveries have revealed that many of these ancient sites were designed not just to be seen, but to be heard. Within the dark, confined spaces of stone chambers and long, narrow passages, something extraordinary happens with sound. At Newgrange in Ireland, the massive corbelled stone dome does not merely keep out the rain, it creates a powerful reverberation. A single voice or a beat on a drum can be transformed, the sound waves bouncing and amplifying in a way that feels both overwhelming and sacred. This is not an accident of construction. It is an intentional acoustic design. An even more profound example lies deep within the hypogeum of Hal Saflieni on Malta. This underground labyrinth contains a chamber now called the Oracle Room. If you speak in a deep voice within this specific room, the sound does not just echo, it resonates at a precise frequency that vibrates through your entire body. The effect is uncanny, as if the stone itself is humming in response. This resonance can create altered states of consciousness, making it a powerful tool for rituals, for communicating with the spirit world, or for ceremonial healing. The builders of the hypogeum carved this chamber from solid limestone to achieve this exact sonic property, a feat that required a sophisticated understanding of vibration and sound waves. What is truly staggering is that this knowledge was not confined to one island or one culture. The same acoustic principles have been identified at sites separated by vast oceans. In the Great Passage Tomb of Micho in Scotland, certain frequencies create a haunting, resonant hum. Across the Atlantic, within the ancient structures of Chavin de Huanta in Peru, labyrinthine stone corridors and underground ducts were engineered to channel sound. A conch shell trumpet blown in one chamber could have its sound projected throughout the entire temple complex, a disembodied voice seeming to emanate from the stones themselves. How could prehistoric cultures, without any of our modern instruments for measuring sound, have possessed such a precise and shared understanding of acoustics? This points to a technological capability we are only beginning to appreciate. They were not just master stonemasons and astronomers, they were pioneers of sonic engineering. They understood that certain rock types resonate at specific frequencies, and they knew how to shape a chamber to amplify that effect. This intentional manipulation of sound adds a profound new layer to the mystery. These sites were not passive monuments, they were interactive instruments. The ceremonies held within them would have been immersive, multi-sensory experiences, where the very air throbbed with power and the boundary between the physical and spiritual worlds seemed to dissolve. The global presence of this acoustic science suggests it was a core component of the megalithic tradition, a secret of vibration and resonance that was as important to their builders as the alignment with the stars. This deep understanding of stone extended far beyond acoustics, right down to the very bedrock they selected. The builders did not just use the nearest available rock, they embarked on epic quests for the perfect material. The great blue stones of Stonehenge tell a story of geological determination. These distinctive spotted dolerite stones were not local to the Salisbury Plain. They were hauled over 150 miles from the Preseli Hills in Wales. This was not a random choice. The journey itself was a monumental undertaking, but it reveals a crucial fact. These people possessed the ability to identify a specific, desirable type of rock from a vast distance away. They knew its properties, its color, its spiritual significance, and they were willing to move heaven and earth to bring it to their sacred site. This same geological intelligence is echoed across the world at Nan Madol. The city's entire skeleton is built from colossal basalt logs, those natural prism-shaped columns. These were not gathered from the reef where the city stands. They were quarried from the other side of the island of Pohnpei, then transported by raft across several miles of open water. The builders specifically sought out this volcanic rock for its natural strength and its unique, ready-made columnar shape that could be stacked like lumber. This was not a matter of convenience, it was a deliberate selection based on a deep familiarity with the island's geology. From the granite spheres of Costa Rica to the limestone blocks of the Maltese temples, we see this pattern repeated. Ancient builders demonstrated an uncanny understanding of stone properties. They knew which rocks were durable enough to withstand millennia of weathering, which were workable enough to be shaped with stone tools, and which possessed the specific density and crystalline structure to produce the resonant acoustic effects they desired. This level of geological expertise is not something that emerges overnight. It suggests generations, even centuries, of accumulated experience, a systematic study of the Earth's materials passed down from master to apprentice. How could this sophisticated Earth science appear so consistently across different continents and cultures? Did a core body of geological knowledge travel along with the architectural blueprints carried by those same master builders? Or does this point to a fundamental human genius for understanding the natural world, a genius that multiple cultures tapped into independently, arriving at the same profound conclusions about the bones of the planet? The stones they left behind are a permanent record of that genius, a testament to a forgotten science of the Earth. The silent stones were raised in a world of dramatic change. The climate of our planet was shifting, and these ancient builders were not just working with stone, they were responding to the very earth beneath their feet. The environment during the megalithic era was far from stable, and this provides a crucial key to understanding their sudden, global emergence. Many of these incredible sites were constructed during periods of profound climate transition. It is no coincidence that the great stone circles of Europe began to appear as the vast, dense forests that had covered the continent started to retreat. This was not a peaceful, gradual process. It was an environmental upheaval that opened new lands, altered migration patterns for animals, and forced human societies to adapt in revolutionary ways. The monumental effort of moving stones may have been a way to anchor communities, to create permanent markers in a landscape that was itself in flux. This pattern is even more striking when we look to the deserts. The astronomical circle at Nabta Playa was not built in the barren Sahara we see today. It was constructed on the shore of a life-giving lake during a time when the entire region was a lush, green savanna teeming with wildlife. The people who tracked the stars there were cattle herders, their lives intimately tied to the rains and the seasons. As the climate began to dry, as the lakes shrank and the green faded to gold, then to brown, this precise stone calendar may have become a vital tool for survival. It was a way to predict the coming rains, to understand the rhythms of a world that was becoming increasingly harsh and unpredictable. These monuments can be seen as a brilliant human response to environmental stress. When the old ways of life are challenged, societies often innovate. They develop new technologies, new social structures, and new spiritual beliefs to make sense of a changing world. The coordinated labor required to build a dolmen or raise a men here suggests the emergence of powerful new leaders and a more complex hierarchical society. The shared knowledge of astronomy and engineering was a form of technology, a suite of survival skills encoded in stone. Why would this same response appear from the coast of Korea to the islands of the Mediterranean? The global distribution of megalithic sites during similar periods of climate change points to a universal human instinct. Faced with the same fundamental pressures, scattered cultures arrived at a similar, profound solution. They did not build huts, they built monuments. They invested their greatest communal efforts into creating structures that connected them to the eternal cycles of the cosmos, perhaps seeking stability and order in the heavens that they could no longer find on an unpredictable Earth. This shared environmental context helps explain the simultaneous dawn of stone across the globe. It was not a single idea spreading from one source, but a parallel awakening, a collective human genius ignited by the same planetary pressures. The stones stand as a testament to our species' resilience, a permanent record of our ability to meet the greatest challenges with intelligence, cooperation, and a profound desire to reach for the stars. These symbolic elements carved into stone are a direct window into the ancient mind, a universal language of spirals, concentric circles, and intricate geometric patterns appears with stunning consistency from the tombs of Ireland to the temples of Malta and the standing stones of India. These were not random decorations. The spiral, winding inward and outward, may have charted the journey of the soul or the cyclical nature of life, death, and rebirth. The recurring circles could represent the sun, the moon, or the eternal cycle of the seasons. This was a symbolic code, a way of encoding complex spiritual ideas into the very fabric of their sacred spaces, and its repetition across vast distances is a mystery that echoes through time. Even more telling is how these structures were positioned within the landscape. The orientation of tombs and circles was rarely arbitrary. Passageways were meticulously aligned to capture the first ray of the winter solstice sun, flooding a dark inner chamber with light. Standing stones were arranged to frame the rising of a specific star or the extreme points of the moon. This was a profound cosmological belief made physical, a testament to a worldview that saw no separation between the earth and the heavens. The human realm, the realm of the ancestors, and the cosmic realm were a single, interconnected reality. The stones were the anchors that held these worlds together. This deep connection is perhaps most vividly seen in their treatment of the dead. The global tradition of chambered tombs reveals a sophisticated and nearly universal concept of the afterlife. From the dolmens of Korea to the great barrows of Europe, the dead were carefully placed in these subterranean stone chambers. These were not merely graves, they were dwellings for the ancestors, built to last for eternity. The common practice of aligning these tombs with celestial events suggests a powerful belief that the soul's passage to the next world was guided by the stars. The ancestors were not gone, they were merely transformed, becoming part of the cosmic order they so meticulously tracked. How can we explain this incredible consistency in spiritual expression? Were these ideas carried across oceans by ancient seafarers, a shared religious tradition spreading to the corners of the globe? Or do these symbols and practices point to something fundamental within the human psyche, a universal response to the great mysteries of existence that emerged independently wherever people gathered to raise stones against the sky? The patterns suggest that whether through contact or a shared inner vision, our ancestors were united by a common quest to find their place in a vast and meaningful cosmos. These silent stone calendars were not built for stargazers alone. Their precise alignment served a deeply practical purpose, rooted in the soil and the changing seasons. For the first farming communities, survival depended on reading the sky. Knowing exactly when the days would begin to lengthen, when the first frost was due, or when the rains would return was not a matter of academic interest. It was the difference between a bountiful harvest and starvation. The great solar alignments at sites like Stonehenge and the lunar cycles tracked at Misho were, in essence, a massive, community-owned agricultural almanac carved in stone. When the sun rose perfectly between those specific sarsen stones, it was a signal broadcast across the land. It told everyone that the time had come to prepare the fields, to sow the seeds, or to gather the crops. This was high-stakes science, and the calendar had to be absolutely reliable. This connection to the land explains the sheer scale of the effort. Why would an entire community dedicate generations of labor to moving 100-ton stones? The answer is simple: food security. A functioning celestial calendar ensured that planting happened at the optimal moment, maximizing the yield from every single field. It allowed for the coordination of labor across a wide area, bringing people together for the critical work of harvest. The monument itself became the heart of the community, a place where the practical need for survival merged with spiritual belief. The cycle of the sun was not just a physical event, it was a divine promise of renewal, and the stone circle was the contract that sealed that promise. We see this agricultural link echoed across the globe. In the deserts of Egypt, the stone circle at Nabta Playa was built by cattle herders who needed to predict the coming of the seasonal rains that would fill the lake and bring forth new pasture. Their calendar was a tool for managing their herds and their very lives in an increasingly arid world. Far to the north, the entrance passage to the Nuraghe tomb in Ireland is engineered to capture the rising sun on the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. This event marked the turning point, the moment when the sun began its return and the promise of spring was made. For a farming society huddled through the dark winter, that single beam of light penetrating the inner chamber was a profound message of hope and a signal to begin preparing for the new growing cycle. This global pattern of stone-built agricultural calendars points to a universal human experience. As scattered cultures made the transition from hunting and gathering to farming, they faced the same fundamental challenge. They had to tame the chaos of nature to find order in the seasons and to plan for a future that was no longer day-to-day. The independent emergence of megalithic structures from Britain to Korea suggests that these early agricultural societies, in their struggle to survive and prosper, all arrived at a similar brilliant solution. They used the one constant in their lives, the reliable cycles of the heavens, to guide their work on Earth, and they built these principles into the landscape on a scale that would last for millennia. The stones were their library, their clock, and their guarantee that the sun would always return to warm the fields. The stones hold more than astronomical alignments, they bear the marks of ancient hands and minds. Carved into their weathered surfaces are intricate patterns that form a mysterious visual language, a code left behind by the builders. On the remote French island of Gavrinis, the interior of a massive burial mound is covered from floor to ceiling with breathtaking spirals, arcs, and zigzag lines, all pecked into the stone with astonishing precision. Far to the north, at Nowth in Ireland, the great curbstones surrounding another passage tomb are a canvas for a similar explosion of art. Here you find concentric circles, radiating sun symbols, and meandering lines that seem to map unseen forces. These are not crude scratches. The sheer complexity and confidence of the lines reveal artists who had mastered their medium, working with stone tools to execute designs of profound symbolic depth. What were they trying to say? The motifs themselves provide the first clue. The spiral is one of the most persistent, a shape that suggests cycles, journeys, or perhaps the vortex of life and death. Zigzag lines might represent water, lightning, or the undulating path of spiritual energy. Then there are the simple cup marks, small circular depressions that appear in their thousands on standing stones across Europe and Asia. A single cup mark might seem insignificant, but when arranged in clusters and lines, they could have served as star maps, territorial markers, or even a primitive counting system. The stunning fact is that these same symbols appear at sites separated by vast oceans. The spiral found at Nuraghe in Ireland is a near twin-to-one carved on a rock face in the American Southwest. The cup and ring marks of Scotland mirror those found on the dolmens of India. How can we explain this consistency? There are two equally compelling possibilities. The first is cultural exchange, that these artistic ideas were carried along ancient trade routes by travelers who shared not only goods but also symbols and stories. The second is parallel development, that the human mind, when confronted with the fundamental mysteries of existence, naturally produces similar abstract forms to represent them. Whether the result of contact or a shared consciousness, these carvings were far more than decoration. They were a sophisticated means of recording and transmitting knowledge in a pre-literate world. A specific pattern might encode a creation myth, a complex spiral could chart an initiation rite, and the arrangement of symbols on a tomb might serve as a map for the soul's journey. Studying this art allows us a fleeting glimpse into the cognitive world of our ancestors. It reveals societies capable of abstract thought, symbolic communication, and a rich cultural life that was every bit as complex as our own. These carvings are the forgotten literature of the Stone Age, and we are only just beginning to learn how to read them. These silent stone cities were not isolated from the elements, but masterfully integrated with them. Beneath the epic scale of their architecture lies a hidden layer of engineering, one that managed the most vital resource of all, water. The ancient builders demonstrated a sophisticated grasp of hydrology, designing systems to control, channel, and utilize water with a foresight that feels remarkably modern. Nowhere is this more evident than at the lost city of Madol. This metropolis, built upon a coral reef, is crisscrossed by a network of canals that functioned as its streets. But these waterways were far more than just transportation routes. They were a complex circulatory system, designed with tidal flows in mind to constantly flush the city and prevent stagnation. The builders engineered these channels to manage the delicate balance between saltwater and freshwater, creating a living, breathing environment in the middle of the ocean. This was not primitive construction, it was advanced urban planning and hydraulic engineering on a staggering scale. This same water wisdom appears thousands of miles away, embedded within the megalithic landscapes of Europe. At many stone circles and chambered tombs across Britain and Ireland, archaeologists have uncovered intricate networks of drains, gutters, and collection basins carved directly into the bedrock or formed by strategically placed stones. These were not afterthoughts. They were integral to the site's design, protecting sacred spaces from flooding and erosion, and perhaps even channeling rainwater for ceremonial use. The builders understood groundwater, runoff, and the need for permanent drainage to preserve their monuments for generations. Why would cultures separated by continents and oceans all incorporate such advanced water management? The answer points to a shared, practical intelligence born from necessity. Whether on a remote Pacific island subject to torrential rains or on the damp moors of northern Europe, these builders faced the same fundamental environmental challenge. Water could nourish, but it could also destroy. Their global solution was to harness its power and mitigate its damage through careful, deliberate engineering. This evidence of hydraulic skill adds a profound new dimension to our understanding of these people. They were not just astronomers and stonemasons, they were civil engineers. They possessed a holistic understanding of their environment, from the stars above to the water tables below. This practical mastery, repeated at sites worldwide, suggests a depth of technological capability that we are only beginning to appreciate. It reveals a people who did not simply build monuments to the heavens, but who shaped their entire world with a wisdom that speaks to us across the millennia. The silent stones have finally begun to speak, and their language is the precise mathematics of the cosmos. Archaeoastronomy, the marriage of archaeology and celestial science, has unlocked a new layer of meaning at these ancient sites, revealing a level of astronomical genius we are only beginning to comprehend. Researchers are now using powerful computer software to digitally rewind the night sky, recreating the exact celestial panorama as it appeared thousands of years ago. This has allowed them to test alignments that the naked eye can no longer perceive due to subtle shifts in the Earth's axis over millennia. The results have been staggering. At the haunting stone circle of Callanish in Scotland, long overshadowed by its famous cousin Stonehenge, these digital models have uncovered a sophisticated lunar calendar. The great central monolith and its surrounding pillars are not just aimed at the sun. They are meticulously arranged to track the complex 18.6-year cycle of the moon, marking its most extreme rising and setting points on the horizon. This is not simple sun worship. This is precise, long-term astronomical record-keeping. It demonstrates that these builders observed and understood celestial motions of breathtaking complexity, cycles that unfold over a span of time longer than a single human generation. This pattern of advanced knowledge is not confined to a single island. From the carved sun daggers of Choco Canyon in North America to the stela of Nabta Playa in the Sahara, we find evidence of cultures tracking not just the sun and moon, but the bright wanderings of planets like Venus and the steady march of specific star clusters. The global consistency of this astronomical sophistication presents a profound puzzle. How could cultures with no written language, scattered across continents and oceans, all independently develop such a detailed and complex understanding of the heavens? Did they each spend centuries, generation after generation, patiently recording the slow dance of the stars on bone or wood until the pattern finally emerged? Or does this point to a shared foundational science, a core body of astronomical knowledge that was carried and adapted across the ancient world? The evidence etched in stone suggests our ancestors were not primitive stargazers. They were the world's first astronomers, their silent observatories a permanent testament to a scientific legacy we are just now learning to read. The silent stones now have voices in their very bones. Genetic science has opened a new chapter in this ancient mystery, analyzing the DNA of the people who are laid to rest within these monumental tombs. The results are rewriting the story of our past. For a long time, many archaeologists believed that the idea of building with massive stones simply spread from one community to the next, a cultural fashion passed along trade routes without people ever needing to move. The latest genetic evidence tells a different story, one of journeys and resettlement. When researchers extracted ancient DNA from skeletons found in megalithic tombs across Europe, they discovered a striking pattern. The individuals buried in these structures from Ireland to Scandinavia often shared a significant amount of their genetic ancestry. This points to a tangible migration, a physical movement of people who carried their traditions with them as they traveled and settled new lands. It was not merely an idea that was copied, it was a people who were moving. This genetic thread connects populations across vast distances, revealing a web of interaction that spanned the European continent. But the story does not end in Europe. Similar genetic studies are beginning to uncover unexpected links between ancient populations worldwide. Traces of DNA found in remains from one continent are showing distant kinship with people on another, suggesting that long-distance travel and intermingling were far more common in prehistory than we ever suspected. This provides biological proof, a hard scientific fact, that these cultures were not isolated. They were part of a vast, interconnected network. The movement of these people helps explain the incredible consistency in architectural techniques and astronomical alignments. They did not just tell their neighbors about a new way to build, they showed them. They were the master builders, the engineers, the astronomers who carried a complete cultural package across the landscape. This genetic evidence forces us to see these megalithic sites not as separate projects, but as the enduring legacy of a far-reaching and dynamic society, a people connected by blood and by a shared vision that they imprinted on the world in stone. As this research continues, each new DNA sequence has the potential to reveal another lost connection, another strand in the global network that binds humanity's deepest past. The very words we use today may hold echoes of those ancient stone movers. Linguistic analysis uncovers a trail of shared terms across continents, where words for stone, sun, and sacred construction bear a family resemblance. In regions with strong megalithic traditions, the names for certain rocks or building techniques sound strangely alike, hinting at a deep, ancestral language that may have once connected these far-flung cultures. The study of ancient place names adds another layer to this mystery. Many hills, rivers, and valleys bear names that translate to Old Stone, Giant's Table, or Sun Circle, preserving a folk memory of the builders and their practices long after their true origins were forgotten. These are not just labels on a map, they are whispers from the past passed down through countless generations. Comparative mythology strengthens this connection with its own compelling evidence. Cultures separated by oceans tell nearly identical stories of giants, gods, or magical beings who moved massive stones with sound or supernatural aid. You find tales of a great flood followed by a period of monumental building, or legends of a wise teacher who showed people how to align stones with the stars. The recurring theme of a lost golden age, a time when humanity lived in harmony with cosmic forces and possessed forgotten knowledge, resonates from the epic poems of India to the oral histories of the Pacific Islands. While this linguistic evidence is often controversial and hotly debated, it adds a profound human dimension to the stone and astronomical data. It suggests that the connections were not merely about technical blueprints, but about shared stories, a common worldview, and perhaps even a unified spiritual language. The stones themselves may be silent, but the words used to describe them, and the myths that grew around them, tell a story of their own, a story of a deeply interconnected ancient world whose echoes still ripple through our languages today. These ancient sites may have also functioned as some of the world's first hospitals. The same acoustic properties that created profound spiritual experiences could have been harnessed for therapeutic purposes. Within the resonant chambers of the hypogeum in Malta or the stone tombs of Ireland, specific sound frequencies would have vibrated through a person's body. This is not merely speculation. Modern research into sound therapy shows that such vibrations can reduce stress, alter brainwave patterns, and promote physical healing. For an ancient person suffering from pain or psychological distress, a ceremony within one of these sonic chambers could have provided genuine, tangible relief, a merging of spiritual belief and practical medicine. Alongside this sonic healing, physical evidence of medical practice has been unearthed. At various megalithic sites across Europe, archaeologists have discovered carefully flaked flint and obsidian blades. These are not crude tools for butchering animals. Their edges are microscopically sharp and show signs of precise, repetitive use. They bear a striking resemblance to surgical scalpels, suggesting they were used for delicate procedures like lancing infections or even minor surgeries. Other artifacts include polished bone needles that could have served for stitching wounds, and smooth stone mortars and pestles stained with the residues of potent medicinal plants. These finds paint a picture of a healer, part priest and part physician, who utilized both the power of sound and the properties of local herbs to treat the sick. This medical knowledge appears to be woven into the very placement of the monuments. Many stone circles and standing stones were erected directly upon powerful geological features. They mark the intersections of underground water streams, deposits of magnetic rock, or geological faults. Modern science confirms that such places often have measurable changes in magnetic and electromagnetic fields. The ancient builders, sensitive to these subtle earth energies, may have intuitively understood that these locations had a unique vitality. Building their healing centers directly upon these energetic hotspots would have amplified the therapeutic effects of their sound and plant-based treatments. This multifunctional purpose transforms our understanding of these places. They were not solely temples for the dead or calendars for the living. They were integrated centers for community well-being, where astronomy, architecture, and medicine converged. The builders possessed a holistic vision of health, seeing no separation between the balance of the cosmos, the energy of the earth, and the wellness of the human body. Their legacy is a powerful reminder that true knowledge encompasses both the stars above and the healing of the person standing beneath them. These ancient monuments are also encoded with a silent language of numbers. The mathematical sophistication displayed in megalithic construction reveals an advanced numerical knowledge that fundamentally challenges our conventional historical timelines. Consider the Great Stone Circle of Stonehenge itself. Long before the Greek philosopher Pythagoras formalized his famous theorem, the builders of Stonehenge were employing perfect Pythagorean triangles in their layout. The arrangement of its stones forms precise right-angled triangles with sides in whole number ratios, a complex geometric principle used to ensure the circle's perfection and its celestial alignments. This was not guesswork, it was applied mathematics of a very high order, used to create a functioning astronomical instrument. This understanding of geometry and proportion was a global phenomenon. Various sites from the pyramids of Giza to the temples of Malta incorporate fundamental mathematical constants into their very fabric. The ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, known as pi, is embedded in the dimensions of countless stone circles. You can see it in the relationship between the diameters of the Great Sarsen Circle at Stonehenge and the smaller bluestone settings. Similarly, the golden ratio, a divine proportion of approximately 1.618 to 1, appears in the floor plans of Maltese temples and the precise proportions of chambered tombs across Europe. This was not a coincidence. The builders were intentionally encoding these universal constants into their sacred architecture, believing these ratios held the key to cosmic harmony. The geometric precision required to create these perfect circles and complex polygonal shapes demonstrates a deep understanding of abstract principles. How do you create a true circle from dozens of irregular stones without a shared unit of measurement and a grasp of radial geometry? How do you design a massive, corbelled stone dome that will support its own weight for 5,000 years without sophisticated calculations? The evidence suggests they used ropes and pegs to plot complex shapes on the ground, employing a practical yet profoundly accurate form of geometry. This mathematical knowledge appears with stunning consistency across different megalithic traditions, from the dolmens of Korea to the stone spheres of Costa Rica. The uncanny recurrence of the same geometric solutions and mathematical concepts on opposite sides of the planet presents us with a monumental puzzle. Did this knowledge arise independently in isolated pockets of genius, or does it point to a common, ancestral source of scientific understanding that was carried across the ancient world? The evidence carved in stone suggests that prehistoric societies possessed intellectual capabilities that historians have traditionally attributed to much later civilizations like the Greeks or the Babylonians. This mathematical sophistication is not a minor detail. It forms a crucial and undeniable part of the megalithic mystery, forcing us to reconsider the very origins of science and human thought. The silent stones testify to a forgotten world of commerce. Building these monuments required more than local effort. It demanded a global network of trade and resource exchange that connected distant cultures. Consider the epic journey of the Stonehenge bluestones, hauled over 150 miles from the Preseli Hills in Wales. This was not a simple local project. It was a logistical operation of staggering complexity, requiring coordinated labor, advanced planning, and established routes for moving dozens of colossal stones across rivers and rugged terrain. The very existence of this endeavor speaks of a society with the organizational skill to mount what were essentially state-sponsored expeditions, long before the concept of a state even existed. This pattern of long-distance procurement is not unique to Britain. We see it echoed with the basalt columns at Nan Madol, quarried on one side of the island and transported by raft across open water. We find it in the exotic stones used in the great temples of Malta, materials sourced from distant parts of the Mediterranean. These were not random acts of acquisition. They were deliberate, sophisticated missions to obtain the perfect material for a sacred purpose. The movement of these stones implies the existence of established trade routes, not just for monumental construction, but for everyday goods as well. At numerous megalithic sites, archaeologists have uncovered artifacts made from materials that could only have come from hundreds or even thousands of miles away. Shells from distant coasts, rare types of flint, and distinctive stones used for tools and ornaments have all been found far from their points of origin. This evidence paints a picture of vibrant, far-reaching economic networks. Cultures we once thought were isolated were, in fact, connected by a web of exchange that moved both raw materials and finished goods across continents. How did a small island community in the Mediterranean acquire obsidian, a volcanic glass prized for its sharp edges, from an island over 500 miles away? The answer lies in the boats. These trade connections were the superhighways of the ancient world, and they did more than just move rocks and shells. They were the vehicle for the most precious cargo of all, knowledge. As traders moved from one community to the next, they carried with them the latest techniques for shaping stone, new methods for celestial observation, and the core principles of sacred geometry. A master builder from the coast of Portugal could share his understanding of the solstice alignment with a community in northern France. The concept of the megalithic yard, that standard unit of measurement, could be transmitted along these routes, allowing for the consistent replication of architectural forms. This exchange of ideas explains the uncanny similarities we see in construction methods and astronomical alignments across the globe. It was not a case of miraculous parallel invention dozens of times over. It was a conversation, a slow and deliberate sharing of a revolutionary technology that spanned generations. The scale of these trade operations forces us to completely reassess the societies that built these monuments. To organize the long-distance transport of 100-ton stones and to maintain these vast economic networks requires a level of social complexity that conventional history has severely underestimated. These were not simple, egalitarian tribes. They were organized, hierarchical societies with leaders who could command labor, specialists who could navigate by the stars, and merchants who could negotiate with foreign cultures. The global distribution of megalithic knowledge was not an accident. It was the direct result of a connected world, a prehistoric globalization that moved both goods and genius across the face of the earth, leaving behind a legacy in stone that we are only now beginning to understand. These stone calendars track time with a precision that humbles our modern clocks. They were not merely marking the sunrise, but charting the complex dance of the moon and stars across generations. The Great Tomb at Nuraghe in Ireland is famous for its winter solstice alignment, where a single beam of sunlight pierces the darkness of the inner chamber. Yet its genius runs deeper. The entire structure appears to be aligned with the 8.8-year cycle of the moon's declination, a subtle wobble in its path across the sky. Even more remarkably, the layout of the surrounding standing stones suggests a knowledge of the 19-year metonic cycle. This is the period it takes for the phases of the moon to recur on the same calendar date, a sophisticated astronomical concept that requires meticulous, long-term observation. Across the sea in France, the thousands of Karnak stones present a different kind of timepiece. The vast parallel rows are not a random forest of stone. They form a giant, open-air observatory. By standing at one end of the alignments and sighting along the rows, an observer could track the rising and setting of the sun and moon at key points in their cycles, effectively using the entire landscape as a massive calendar. This was not just about counting days, it was about predicting the seasons, the tides, and the celestial events that governed their world. This understanding of time was a global phenomenon. In the American Southwest, the ancestral Pueblones carved spiral petroglyphs that functioned as solar calendars, with daggers of light marking the solstices and equinoxes. In the jungles of Central America, the Maya developed their own elaborate calendar systems, but their earliest precursors likely used stone alignments to make similar observations. The independent emergence of these complex calendars presents a profound question. Did this advanced knowledge of celestial mechanics spread from a single, forgotten source, carried by travelers across oceans and continents? Or does it reveal a universal human capacity, a shared intellectual awakening where cultures separated by vast distances all look to the heavens and through patient observation, independently unlock the same mathematical secrets of time? The stones stand as silent witnesses to this global quest for order, a quest to measure eternity itself. This architectural evolution unfolds like a story written in stone. The earliest megaliths were often simple, solitary standing stones or unadorned burial chambers. These were the first experiments, the initial attempts to impose a human order on the landscape using the most permanent material available. A single menhir planted in the earth might mark a grave, a territorial boundary, or a significant place in the local cosmology. Its power lay in its sheer presence, a declaration that someone was here, that this place mattered. Then, over centuries, we see the ideas grow more complex. Those single stones begin to be arranged into patterns. Cists, which are simple stone-lined boxes for the dead, evolve into long, chambered tombs covered by massive earthen mounds. The builders were learning, generation by generation, how to create larger, more stable interior spaces. This was a slow, cumulative process of trial and error, where each successful structure informed the next. The refinement is visible in the stonework itself. Early constructions often used rough, unshaped boulders, fitted together with smaller packing stones. But as time passed, the techniques became more sophisticated. We see the emergence of pecking and grinding, where stone hammers were used to slowly dress the surface of a megalith, creating smoother faces and sharper edges. This was not merely for aesthetics. A shaped stone could bear weight more efficiently and fit more securely with its neighbors, creating structures that could soar higher and last longer. The most advanced sites reveal a mastery that feels sudden, yet was built upon millennia of quiet progress. The perfectly fitted polygonal walls of Sacsayhuaman in Peru did not appear out of nowhere. They represent the pinnacle of a long tradition of working with massive stones, a tradition that began with much simpler constructions. This pattern of gradual refinement is not confined to one region. We see it in the progression from the earliest, simpler dolmens of Korea to the later, colossal examples with their 100-ton capstones. We trace it in the development of the Maltese temples, where the earliest structures are modest, while the later complexes like Haga Kim and Mnajdra display ambitious, multi-apse plans and beautifully finished facades. This parallel evolution across the globe presents a fascinating puzzle. Did separate cultures, facing the same physical challenges of moving and raising colossal stones, simply arrive at the same sequence of engineering solutions through a shared process of logical problem solving? Or does this similar trajectory of development hint at a deeper connection, a shared pool of knowledge where successful innovations were communicated and adapted across vast distances? The steady increase in astronomical precision points strongly to accumulated knowledge. Aligning a single stone to the sunrise is one thing. Engineering an entire passage tomb so that a slender beam of light strikes a specific glyph deep inside for only a few minutes on the winter solstice, as at Nuraghe, is an achievement of an entirely different magnitude. It requires not only precise observation, but also the mathematical and architectural skill to translate that observation into a permanent, stone-built reality. This level of sophistication could only be achieved through the careful recording and transmission of data over many human lifetimes. The architectural evolution of these sites is therefore a direct record of the intellectual history of their builders. It shows us a humanity in a state of active, collaborative learning, slowly unlocking the secrets of engineering, astronomy, and their own place in the universe. Each new generation stood on the shoulders of the giants who came before, both literally and figuratively, reaching ever higher toward the sky. Raising a 100-ton stone was an act of social engineering as much as physical engineering. The sheer logistics behind these monuments reveal a hidden world of prehistoric administration, a level of social complexity that forces us to rethink our most basic assumptions about early human societies. This was not the work of a small, disorganized tribe. To quarry a single megalith, transport it for miles, and then erect it with precision required the coordinated labor of hundreds of people, all working in concert for months or even years. This level of coordination implies a powerful and respected leadership, individuals or councils capable of planning, provisioning, and commanding a large workforce. They had to solve immense practical problems, from feeding and housing the workers to establishing a clear chain of command. This was a society with specialized roles, not just laborers but also architects, surveyors, toolmakers, and organizers. The existence of these monuments is proof that our ancestors had already mastered the art of large-scale project management thousands of years before the invention of writing. This sophisticated social organization was a global phenomenon, solved in eerily similar ways across the world. From the teams that moved the Stonehenge bluestones in Britain to the crews that stacked the basalt logs at Madol in the Pacific, the basic principles of labor coordination are the same. They all understood the need for division of labor, for synchronized effort, and for a shared goal that could motivate an entire community. This global pattern points to a universal human capacity for complex social organization, emerging independently wherever the challenge of monumental construction arose. These were not simple, egalitarian bands. They were societies with hierarchy, with a clear vision, and with the administrative skill to turn that vision into a permanent mark on the landscape. The stones themselves are the ultimate resume of a forgotten leadership, a silent testament to the political and administrative genius of our prehistoric ancestors. The stones themselves were only part of the system. To master the heavens, the megalithic builders developed sophisticated tools for observation and calculation, turning abstract knowledge into precise, repeatable science. In Germany, the Nebra sky disk offers a breathtaking glimpse into this technology. Crafted from bronze inlaid with gold, it is the oldest known realistic depiction of the cosmos. The disk does not just show stars, it maps a specific cluster, the Pleiades, set between a sun and a crescent moon. Golden arcs along its edge mark the solstice sunrises and sunsets, transforming a portable object into a complex astronomical instrument and a physical calendar. This was not a solitary artifact. Similar principles were likely applied using perishable materials, like wooden sighting tools or knotted cords for measuring angles, tools that have long since returned to the Earth. The very architecture of the monuments functioned as a permanent, unbreakable instrument. A narrow gap between two massive stones could serve as a precise backsight, framing the rising of a specific star on a single night of the year. The long, dark passageway of a tomb became a telescope, channeling a beam of light to mark a solstice with split-second accuracy. This was a seamless fusion of tool and temple, where the building itself was the machine. The development of these methods shows a clear and consistent evolution across different traditions. We see it in the move from simple standing stones that marked a single sunrise to the complex rings and rows that could track the moon's intricate 18-year cycle. This was not random discovery. It was a dedicated scientific practice requiring generations of patient observation, meticulous record-keeping, and the systematic refinement of tools and techniques. The evidence of these specialized instruments reveals a prehistoric world alive with intellectual pursuit, where the desire to understand the cosmos drove innovation in both metal and stone. This technological dimension proves their astronomy was not myth, but a rigorous, applied science. These ancient builders were not just placing stones, they were reshaping the very Earth itself. Their environmental engineering reveals a sophistication that extends far beyond the monuments we see today. The lost city of Madol stands as a supreme example of this, a metropolis constructed not on solid ground, but upon a coral reef. To create its nearly 100 artificial islands, the builders had to perform a staggering feat of landscape modification. They moved countless tons of coral and basalt to raise these platforms above the tidal waters, but their genius did not stop there. They engineered an entire network of canals that functioned as a complex hydraulic system. These waterways were designed with a deep understanding of tidal flows, constantly flushing the city to prevent stagnation and managing the delicate balance between saltwater and freshwater. This was not primitive construction, it was advanced urban planning and ecological engineering on a breathtaking scale. This mastery of water and land was a global phenomenon. Across Europe, many stone circles and chambered tombs were built with intricate, integrated drainage systems. At sites in Britain and Ireland, archaeologists have uncovered networks of gutters, drains, and collection basins carved directly into the bedrock or formed by strategically placed stones. These features were not afterthoughts, they were fundamental to the site's design, protecting the sacred spaces from erosion and flooding, and perhaps even channeling rainwater for ceremonial use. In some regions, we see evidence of extensive terracing on hillsides surrounding megalithic complexes. These terraces would have managed soil erosion, created microclimates for agriculture, and controlled water runoff, demonstrating a holistic understanding of the local ecology. Why would cultures separated by continents all develop such advanced environmental management? This global consistency suggests a shared knowledge of how to manipulate a landscape, a core set of engineering principles that traveled with the megalithic tradition. This evidence completely overturns the romantic notion of primitive societies living in a simple, passive harmony with nature. Instead, it reveals our ancestors as active, intelligent managers of their environment. They did not simply adapt to their world, they actively engineered it. They possessed a profound understanding of hydrology, soil science, and microclimates, which they used to ensure the stability and longevity of their sacred centers. This environmental prowess represents another, often overlooked dimension of their technological achievement. They were not just master astronomers and stonemasons, they were the world's first civil engineers, whose legacy is written not only in the stones they raised, but in the very ground upon which they built. These silent stones speak a language that crossed oceans and mountains. The global distribution of nearly identical structures forces us to confront a monumental question. How did the precise knowledge of how to build them travel such immense distances? The answer lies in a prehistoric world far more connected than we ever believed. Imagine a master builder from the coast of Portugal sharing the secrets of the solstice alignment with a community in northern France, or a seafaring navigator from the Mediterranean carrying the principles of corbelled vaults to the shores of Malta. This was not a slow diffusion of vague ideas, but the direct transmission of complex technical knowledge. The consistency in astronomical alignments, from the 19-year lunar cycle at Callanish to the solstice markers at Stonehenge, suggests this information was not just whispered but taught with precision. How could a culture in the Orkney Islands and a culture in the Egyptian Sahara both develop an understanding of the same complex celestial event without some form of communication? The evidence points to a network, a web of contact that allowed this specialized knowledge to flow. The most likely highways for this exchange were the world's oceans and rivers. Maritime networks connected coastal communities, turning the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic fringe into a vibrant corridor of ideas. The presence of nearly identical dolmens on the coasts of Korea, Portugal, and North Africa is a powerful clue. These structures are not just stylistically similar, they are functionally the same, suggesting the blueprint itself traveled with people who knew how to implement it. These ancient mariners used stable, seaworthy vessels, navigating by the stars to link continents. Overland trade routes were just as vital. The movement of rare materials tells the story. Obsidian from the island of Melos found in mainland Greece, Baltic amber discovered in Mycenaean tombs, and distinctive jadate axes from the Alps unearthed in Britain all testify to routes that moved more than goods. Along these ancient paths, traders and travelers would have carried the latest techniques for shaping stone, new methods for celestial observation, and the core principles of sacred geometry. This exchange of ideas explains the uncanny similarities we see in construction methods across the globe. It was not a case of miraculous parallel invention dozens of times over. It was a conversation, a slow and deliberate sharing of a revolutionary technology that spanned generations. Some researchers propose that the megaliths themselves were part of this communication system. These towering stones may have served as permanent navigational markers, visible from the sea or from distant hills, guiding travelers along established routes. A distinctive stone circle on a headland could have functioned as a kind of lighthouse, its unique silhouette identifying a safe harbor or a trading post to those who knew how to read the landscape. Even more intriguing is the possibility that the structures encoded information within their very form. The specific number of stones in a circle, the geometric ratios of its layout, or the alignment of its central axis could have conveyed specific meanings to initiated builders. A master architect arriving at a new site might read the local stone circle like a blueprint, understanding the astronomical knowledge and construction techniques favored by that community simply by studying the monument's design. This turns the entire megalithic landscape into a vast, interconnected library, with each site holding a piece of a larger, global message. The ultimate proof of this communication network is the evidence of long-distance cultural exchange that conventional history has long overlooked. We find not only similar tools and artifacts across continents, but also shared spiritual symbols. The spiral motif appears in the tombs of Ireland and the rock art of the Maori. The cup and ring mark is found in Scotland and India. These are not random artistic choices. They are a symbolic language, a visual code that could be understood across linguistic barriers. This points to a level of cultural intimacy that goes far beyond casual trade contact. It suggests periods of coexistence, intermarriage, and the deep integration of ideas. The genetic evidence now emerging, showing the movement of people buried in these tombs, provides the biological confirmation. It was not just ideas that were moving, it was people. They carried their entire cultural world with them, their knowledge of the stars, their skill with stone, and their sacred symbols. This sophisticated, globe-spanning communication network helps explain the greatest puzzle of all, the sudden and simultaneous emergence of a shared architectural vision that connected humanity in a forgotten age of stone. The investigation into this global stone network is far from over. Each new technological breakthrough peels back another layer of this ancient mystery, revealing connections we never thought possible. Advanced dating methods are pushing the origins of these sites further back in time, while satellite imagery and Lidar scans are uncovering entirely new structures hidden beneath jungle canopies or buried for millennia under farmland. From orbit, we can now trace the ghostly outlines of forgotten stone circles and processional ways, seeing the landscape as the builders themselves might have planned it. This is more than just finding new sites, it is about understanding the system. Sophisticated computer modeling allows us to simulate ancient skies with perfect accuracy, testing alignments that have been lost to the slow wobble of the Earth's axis. We can digitally reconstruct the sounds within a chamber tomb or calculate the precise manpower needed to move a 100-ton block. These tools are transforming speculation into testable science. At the same time, the revolution in genetic research is writing a new history of human movement. By analyzing ancient DNA from bones found within these monuments, we are discovering unexpected family ties between people separated by vast continents. The story is no longer just about the stones, but about the very people who raised them, tracing their journeys across the globe in a prehistoric diaspora we are only beginning to map. The future of this field lies in tearing down the walls between disciplines. The astronomer must speak with the geologist, the archaeologist with the geneticist. Why was this specific type of stone chosen? What can the soil chemistry tell us about the diet and health of the builders? How do the celestial alignments at a site in India compare to those in Peru? It is at these intersections that the most profound insights are waiting to be found. Every year, new discoveries in understudied regions, from the dense rainforests of the Amazon to the remote highlands of Central Asia, expand the map of this phenomenon. Each new circle, each new dolmen, adds another day to point to a pattern that is becoming undeniably global. The central question remains, were these structures the product of a shared human genius emerging independently across the world? Or were they the legacy of a forgotten network of contact? The answer likely lies somewhere in between, a complex tapestry of independent innovation and sporadic, long-distance communication. The stones have kept their secrets for thousands of years, but for the first time we have the tools to listen. The continuing investigation does not promise easy answers, but it guarantees a far richer and more surprising history of our species. Our past is being rewritten one stone at a time. Our journey through this global stone network reveals a world humming with connections long before our history books begin. We have walked among the standing stones of Europe, descended into the sunken sanctuaries of Malta, and traced the astronomical genius of the Sahara. We have seen the same stone tables raised in Korea and Portugal, the same mathematical principles etched into temples from India to Peru, and the same celestial knowledge encoded in monuments separated by oceans. These are not isolated wonders, they are the scattered pages of a single global story, a story of a humanity far more curious, capable, and interconnected than we have been led to believe. The sheer consistency of their astronomical alignments, their geometric precision, and their engineering solutions defies any simple explanation of coincidence. It points toward a shared pool of knowledge, a forgotten science that flowed across continents, carried by master builders and intrepid mariners who saw no barrier in the open sea. While many mysteries remain, the evidence is mounting, forcing a profound reconsideration of our past. The old, linear narrative of human progress, slowly climbing from primitive tribes to advanced empires, is crumbling. In its place, we find a tapestry of brilliant, parallel awakenings, of cultures that reached for the stars and left their mark in stone. The silent testimony of these megaliths challenges us to listen, to question, and to wonder. What other secrets of our ancient world are still waiting to be unearthed? What does this interconnected past tell us about our shared human potential? I invite you to share your own thoughts on these mysterious connections in the comments below. If you are captivated by the hidden threads of our history, consider subscribing for more journeys into the world's greatest unsolved